Hey everyone, we're back in my bedroom, and it's a bit weird that I'm doing this video with, my really poorly decorated, apparently, bedroom in the background and me wearing a shirt with my face on it, but I guess I just can't help but be thematically appropriate. I want to begin this with a strong statement, and the way that you react to it might tell you something. Here goes. You, the person watching this, and me, the person performing this script to camera, are not friends. Depending on whether you're a regular on the channel or any of the other things that I do, you might not have enjoyed hearing that. But it's true. For the duration that you watch this video, I am in control of what's said by me to you, what you see and what you learn about the topic that we're covering today, parasocial relationships. There have been a lot of things in the past few months alone that have really made this something that plays on my mind. And by the time this is all edited and made nice for your enjoyment, it'll be some point in mid-January 2023. It'll probably be my first video of the year. So an ideal time for not just barreling headfirst into a topic that probably doesn't suit my shooting from the hip approach, but does allow me to do a little self-reflection and maybe show off a little bit. Because what I'm going to do in this video is the one thing a magician should never do. I'm going to reveal the trick to you. I can and will tell you what a parasocial relationship is, why people seek them out, why creators may try to cultivate them, and whether I think they're good or bad, and spoiler alert, we're in big land of contrast territory. That's not fun, or at least it's not fun enough. I want to show you how someone might try to cultivate one with their audience. How much of that is me being the fun person with long hair, and how much of it is an act? Do I even know the answer to that? And how do I do it? I guess that's what we're going to find out. I also want to say before we dive into it that I know this is going to seem dissonant because I'm going to do all of the classic content creatory stuff like and subscribe, hit that bell, go to my Patreon, in a video that is significantly going to be a critique of those kinds of things. But as you'll see, it's kind of a necessary evil. So just sit back, relax, enjoy the video, and let's dive in. What is a parasocial relationship? It's definition time. If you're a person who's been on the internet ever, or watched TV, or listened to radio plays, I know they're a thing in Fallout 3, but I don't know if they still exist outside of poorly structured post-apocalyptic video games anymore. You might have an intuitive idea of what a parasocial relationship and a parasocial interaction is. The act of watching a video essayist who addresses the camera in a conversational way is an example of a parasocial interaction. So for example, the way I'm addressing you right now as if we're simply at the pub or a coffee shop or just in my poorly decorated bedroom together is one of the ways that an interaction can be parasocial. You might get a sense that there's a flow to the conversation, that there's a back and forth between us, even though, now you're thinking about it, I'm talking at you. You can't really reply to me and have me respond in real time, at least not on YouTube. And also imagine how parasocial it could get if you could do that, and maybe we'll talk about an example of where that's the case later. That sensation that I'm sure you would have been feeling if I hadn't pointed it out, in most likelihood would have faded after you stopped watching the video, because at that point the interaction has ended, there's no charming me to focus on, and you probably have something else to be getting on with. Here's a question for you. Have you ever just offhandedly mentioned something from a TV show or a podcast or something as if you were involved in it somehow? Or maybe you've even done it with one of my videos, mentioning what I'm up to, what I wore, whether I seemed happy or sad. Look, I'm not going to pretend like I expect any of you really to have done that, but if you have done, then you've possibly entered a parasocial relationship with whoever or whatever it is. Let's try to nail down a definition for parasocial relationships here, cobbled together from a lot of sources, but it will do for our purposes. Parasocial relationship is a one-sided relationship that a person has with someone or something who controls the terms of that relationship. So for example, I control what you see here, so long as you're engaging in a parasocial interaction with me. Or if you're very, very unlucky, a parasocial relationship with me. What you see, what you hear, everything about this, it's all under my control. That's different from any face-to-face relationship, because presumably I would know who you are. We'd be having an actual back and forth, and you'd be able to see me be truly unguarded and genuine in a way I just can't be in these videos. Like the time I was with some friends, I felt overwhelmed when we were out together, I went to the bathroom to cry a bit, and one of them caught me. You only know that because I let you know it. Another element of the trick exposed. These videos, my streams, the podcasts, you don't get that level of exposure. You could argue that the streaming format gets you closer, which perhaps explains some of the things we'll talk about later. That's the thing I find interesting. Where the power lies. Sure, you can engage in the share zone's most important lesson. If it sucks, hit the bricks. And that does give the knowledgeable side of the relationship ultimate power in a lot of ways. It's like that old joke about going to see the doctor and saying that my arm hurts when I do this, and the doctor says, well, have you tried not doing that? The problem is that people don't just quit. It's like saying that to your parents in their 60s who have been smoking since age 13. Please don't ask me how my Christmas went. Again, you see? Another moment of parasociality right there for you. In a circumstance where we know some people don't just stop, when they've elevated to the level of a parasocial relationship, then the power lies with the unaware media personality or figure. But the idea that they're actually unaware doesn't really make sense to me in a lot of cases. Obviously, the very famous pop star knows that there are people very invested in their lives, and that drives an element of their living. But at least hypothetically, it's not the bulk of it. If you're a Twitch streamer, maybe even a VTuber, which by the way is a thing that's incredibly fascinating to me on so many levels, your personal interaction is the thing that you're turning into income. This isn't a moan on my part. It's part of the territory, and these social networks encourage it. But if I'm aware of it, people who are making a lot more than me will almost certainly also be aware of it. That's the thing about all of this. It used to be a phenomena confined to the very famous or to TV characters or, I guess, gladiators in ancient Rome. I'm not kidding, by the way. They were basically rock stars in their day. No, I haven't been watching HBO's Rome. Stop asking. While that could get weird, famous people have had stalkers and worse, it was something that was perhaps less frequent due to how few things were a valid target for it. Like, in a pre-social media age, I'm just an office worker who's very opinionated at the pub and has a failed heavy metal band. Now, as I'll discuss in the next section, I do have to put up with a lot of very weird stuff. And that's the point now with social media, the incentives therein, and the fact that not only are we monetized by the platforms through data sales and our content pulling in audiences, but we can get paid by platforms or convert part of our clout on certain platforms into money. So now, not only can everyone potentially cultivate these followings, there can actually be quite a lot of money in cultivating it. So now we have a situation where anyone with an internet connection could both cultivate and be in a parasocial relationship. And shit gets complicated and weird with all the money sloshing around. And let me tell you, there's definitely some significant amount of money in this. As part of my research for this video, I decided that I wanted to watch some popular Twitch streamers. Some who I watch regularly, some who I just found in the recommended tab with large viewerships and decided to just watch silently. Not interacting in the chat, nothing like that. And the thing that stood out was just how often an interaction that involved money changing hands happened. And also how much better at interacting they were than me. But my audience prefers the bad treatment because, and I'm very clear about this with them, it's what they deserve. It struck me how ruthlessly well executed it all was, and to be clear, I don't begrudge the people behind these accounts for wanting to get paid for their efforts, and in fairness, the money value of the interactions, assuming it wasn't the same people doing it over and over and over again, wasn't huge per person. So this largely falls under, it's your money, and if you want to spend it on a 3D anime girl avatar voiced by someone playing a video game, then you do you. Which is an actual category in my very complicated filing system that apparently exists in my brain now. Now, I'm not specifically accusing anyone of doing this, certainly not anyone I watched, because none of them seemed to actively do this while I was watching them. That being said, the potential for exploitation on the part of the content creator is, I think, pretty clear. Let me put it this way. If we were, in fact, at the pub, you might buy me a drink while we're hanging out. Nothing wrong with that. We're in a pub. And I can just get the next round and we'll more or less be even. On Twitch, Patreon, YouTube, wherever. All I can give you in return is the product of my creative efforts and maybe an Italian accented text-to-speech quoting something funny you type into it. That might be enough for you. You might just fancy hearing a Turkish twink screaming at a cardboard cutout of Donald Trump. And yes, that's a real one I still have on my Twitch. Here's the original clip of it.
Neymiş efendim, dolar 8 lira olacak bu taraf. Trabzon doları düşüreceksin. Ulan biz peynir ekmeği dolarla mı?
Or you might just want to toss a coin to your streamer. But what I give you in return isn't tangible. It's a sense of interaction and interactivity. There are obviously other reasons you might want to be here. Most people don't interact and just consume it like it's a TV show, or just want the information from what they're watching. And that's fine. And it's a little outside the scope of what we're talking about here. So if you were wondering why I make it almost impossible to pay me by being abrasive, you might have a little sense as to why here. I should also say that parasocial relationships as described mostly refers to a feeling of friendship. Though I will just say, if you've ever developed a nemesis online, you're kind of doing the same thing, but hopefully not paying them or anything, unless it's part of some bizarre thing that you get a buzz out of. Anyway, I've lingered on it too long. So, just don't try very hard not to do that, please. We know what they are now, how they express themselves, and I even admitted some shameful consumption habits of my own that I had to engage in for this video. But I wanted to get a little personal, a little honest, and a little bit more open with you all. We're going to talk about my experiences on both sides of this divide. Creator versus consumer. Alright, it's time for me to put some cards on the table. I am a content creator, with some degree of following, a Patreon, a Discord, a Twitter, and most of the assumed accessories you'd assume from. I've also been a follower of a lot of people, and I actively dislike the things that I have to do to make this a thing. Like the calls to action, the reminders to follow or like or subscribe. It feels grubby and cheap, because it is. Now I have this fortunate dual perspective, which means that I'm going to have to bridge some gaps here and explain myself a little. And I promise this isn't me asking for people to feel sorry for me, either as a content creator or influencer or whatever, or as someone who has at times developed these relationships for reasons that aren't exactly the easiest for someone like me to relive necessarily. But we suffer for our art, I suppose. Let's start with the content creator perspective. When I opened this video, all that time ago, you probably had some kind of reaction to the opening statement. If you're new here, you probably weren't that deeply impacted by it, and that's okay, and makes sense, because I'm almost a perfect stranger to you. I want to expand on that thought a little bit though. It's not just that we're not friends, it's just that aside from the things that I've mentioned about my life, you don't know me. A person is more than the experiences they choose to share on YouTube or Twitter or TikTok, or Tumblr, I guess, since that's apparently back. It can offer you a picture, it can make you feel like you know me, but I've made sure to point out when I've been doing the trick of parasociality to you, because, like I said, that is somewhat the point of the video. When I was looking around for other videos about this, because that's what I do when I pick a topic, I would run into a particular type of video, one which opened very similarly to how this one did, and the intent was never to make the viewer feel bad, but to explain what exactly the content creator wanted. One in particular, and I'll have to paraphrase, because I've forgotten exactly which video it was, because this was a sentiment I ran into over and over again, but they said something that stuck with me. That was along the lines of, I'm entertainment. That's all I am. If I stop being entertaining, I want you to stop watching because that's what I am and what I'm offering to you. The thing about that is, I believe content creators when they say that. You know why? Because that's how I feel. But there is a complicating factor in all of this. You probably know where I'm going with this. It's the fact that literally this video, or my stream, or any content creator's work requires a lot of effort and time. That's time they could spend with their partner, reading a book, or playing KOTOR 2 for the 23rd time, or even just relaxing, but they choose to expend this effort. The thing about that effort is, it's usually poorly rewarded. If you're someone who's deliberately shy about leading into parasocial dynamics, or you just have niche interests, which is very cool, but let's be honest, you will be punished by the algorithm and public opinion. So you're kind of screwed coming and going, unless you're just like the most charismatic person who ever lived, or you already have a big following. And to be honest with you, I'm trying to get there. Believe me, I am. And that's just it though. I'm trying. I think the impression I've probably given so far is that I'm at best a little ambivalent about parasocial relationships. And that makes the position I'm in as a content creator, or as content creator SK, I guess, really weird and contradictory and kind of aggravating at times. To be clear, I don't resent anyone who comments on the videos, is in the Discord server, wants to talk to me, but throughout it all, there's this doubt that permeates it all. I don't want to string people along with nothing but my on-camera presence and just a general willingness to be a bit of a jackass. The other thing about it that can make me and other people who are in this position, or even well above my pay grade, uncomfortable is the fact that it opens you up in particular ways. People think they can speak to you, about you, in a particular way, and part of this has always been true on social media and early internet forums, or just even in real life. People can be assholes or overly familiar. Let's talk about the things that really aren't okay, that you get inflicted on you. I'm a nice person. I'm even quite personable, and I want to help people out, listen to them, and just be as present as I can for people who think I can help them. The thing is, that applies primarily to my friends. That's not to say that if you DM me on Twitter about something, that I'll never reply to you. There have been instances when people are asking me for, just to give an example, just for relationship advice. And while this is accidentally topical because apparently left-wing masculine content creators are the key to stopping teenagers becoming Andrew Tate fans or something, I just can't be fucked with it, man. Like, I'm gonna be honest. It's not really appropriate given my relationship to those people who ask for these things from me to give even solicited advice, or to know about some of the things that they mention. If you take one thing away from this video, please stop being so overly familiar, either with other content creators or with me. It makes the relationship more alienating for us both, and I promise you, your friends, the actual friends that you have, will be better placed than me to actually offer good advice. Now, there's the things that are open to scrutiny. Once upon a time, I had an account on Twitter get really angry at me because I had a PayPal link in my bio. The only way I had to make money at the time was my Twitch stream. And the thing about Twitch as a platform is they take half of the subscription money away from you. And you can tell this was a long time ago because I wasn't even doing this at the time, and while this specific account was way off base, as I mentioned, they didn't know anything about me. or my circumstances because we were not friends. There is, however, a kernel of important self-reflection and perhaps possibly valid criticism there. I'll go into a more in-depth series of thoughts on it in a bit, but right now, at this point in the video, I want to offer a perspective on why I ask people to subscribe on Twitch or to the Patreon or really have any means of monetizing the stuff at all if this is how I feel about it. Especially when that monetization opens up this type of relationship to the potential of me taking advantage of some poor charmed viewer, which seems laughable, admittedly, but let's just pretend for the sake of my ego right now. I want to take an example of a video I did on this channel, my video on ecofascism. Now that video was a pretty average video for me in terms of performance. It had a little bit in the way of gimmicks, but not too much. I decided to time myself doing all of the various tasks associated with it, and it came out to around 13 hours, which alongside a full-time job is a lot of time, and I can only assume for people who do similar content, it comes out to something like that. Maybe more if they do it full-time. It's a lot of work, and the thing is, if 13 hours was typical, in the UK at the time of recording, if I got paid the actual real living wage, I'd make something like £141 per video. You will notice I don't. And in my case, that's fine. I have a day job, right? For a lot of other people, this is the only way to make money. In fact, for me, this kind of thing was for a while, and that pushes you in certain ways. In my case, it made me a bit highly strung because I'm instinctively uncomfortable with some of the imposed requirements to do this in order to make rent, right? And in some cases, others seem to, if not revel, then be at some kind of ease with it, which I will admit I am now much more at ease with it. I find it hard to deny at the most basic level that creative output should be rewarded and that people have often patronized artists or creators they've enjoyed all the way back to the fucking pharaohs of ancient Egypt. So in a way, as SK the Crusader, the creator, those of you who are patronizing me either on Twitch or Patreon or whatever are like the Suleiman to my Mimarsanan. One other thing I think really stands out from the creator point of view is just how alienating and lonely it can be. That's not to be all woe is me about it. It's to offer the thought that parasocial relationships can be a double-edged sword, especially the modern iterations of them, where any old person can cultivate some kind of following. In that spirit, I want to take a look at the second edge of the sword and think about this from the other side, the consumer side. When I was writing this section of the video, I was at my parents' in Reading, and the truth is that I felt really alone and lonely. And now that I'm recording this in my flat in Nottingham, despite my partner being back from her Christmas trip and me finally being over the worst of the New Year's Eve repercussions, it doesn't feel much better, and for those keeping track, that's another moment of me leaning into the parasocial of it all. None of it was false, but it was on my terms, and I bet you did feel a little closer to me, didn't you? Though, I will say that the fact that my diet is generally better when I'm not at my parents' has at least helped me get over the New Year's Eve repercussions a little bit, and feel a little bit better for this recording. What do you think I did to try to alleviate these feelings when I was in the most boring town in the world? Message my partner? Sure. I dropped a few messages, sent her a cat pic or two. In fact, you can have a couple yourselves. That's Bella, the meanest 15 or so year old cat in the world. She can't jump to the window from outside anymore, but she'll still scratch you if you pet her incorrectly. What I started doing was I would watch videos on YouTube or people's Twitch streams, and while I'm not exactly in the position of thinking that the history YouTuber who does really simply illustrated videos about the fall of the Roman Republic, and no, I still haven't been watching HBO's Rome again, just, okay, I don't think them and I are friends. It is oddly comforting to go back and watch those videos, even if I've watched them before. So maybe it is a bit parasocial, and I listen to podcasts when I travel, and sometimes the act of being in a Twitch chat where the streamer acknowledges you just gives you a spark sometimes. It's something that I think is easy to fall into, and I've fallen into sometimes. I'm the classic two sides of the same coin. SK the Crusader, who has people be parasocial with them, and Sinan, the sometimes lonely, sometimes sad person who cheers themselves up by watching videos where Julius Caesar is represented by a slightly deep red square. That's kind of what I wanted to get at in this bit of the video. For a lot of people, these kinds of relationships can be a help. We all have some kind of need for interaction, or at least the sensation of it. And it may feel like a long time ago, but in most countries, we just went through a period of time where it was essentially illegal to socialize in person. That's tough and isolating. It was tough and isolating for me. And if listening to a podcast or a YouTube video while you're cooking makes you feel like there's a friendly or comforting voice in your life, God bless. Who am I to tell you that's bad? Just keep being healthy with it. And since this is a largely British audience and I mentioned cooking, please season your food. Please. Of course, for some people, it doesn't just stay healthy. If it did, we could more or less wrap up the video here and be on our merry way. The thing about friends, I mean AFK or actual friends, is they can encourage you to make bad decisions. I remember a good friend of mine who actually sometimes watches these videos, so hey, sorry about telling this story. Whose 20th birthday happened in our first year of university together, and me and a mutual friend of ours decided that, you know what, we're going to go out, we're not going to drink, right? We're not going to drink. And I think you know where this is going, right? To cut a long story short, we broke into a student hall while blackout drunk by breaking the front door because he thought he lost his card that gave him access, and it turned out that one of us had taken the card from him. So that door was broken for like months. So, what's the point of that story? Well, it's another example of how you perform the trick, because I bet you kind of liked hearing that personal story about me and my friends and the hijinks we got up to. But also, it's to show how you might choose to bend a little for your friends. And a lot of people do perceive their parasocial subjects as friends. So, if you're a particularly unscrupulous person, you can take advantage of these relationships. You could get them to do all sorts of things for you, like brigade a person you don't like on social media, or make a gif of Darth Revan, but where he's revealed to be Mike Gapes. Sorry to the person I had do that, I should really have paid for it because it's a masterpiece. The more obvious exploitation, though, is that you can get people to pay you for the sense of community they might get. I talk about this in my main character video briefly, but one of the things that Twitch does very well is just giving people their subscriber badges for how long they've been paying a Twitch streamer money. Another trick is to give people access, and I don't just mean early access to videos and stuff, because frankly that is kind of boring, and wow, I am really not selling my own Patreon well here, but it is kind of a dull benefit, right? The real fun these days comes in the form of Discords, because you're hanging out with your favorite content creator in what is their own space. How cool is that? Well, it's certainly enticing, especially if you're a big content creator, because while it might be that only a small percentage of your fan base will go for it, that's still a pretty substantial number of people, and if you're a consumer, you probably love the feeling of exclusivity and closeness, almost like your friends. Almost. This is where I start to think about some of the darker expressions of parasocial relationships, because it's easy to laugh at the extremes of it. The topical ones at the moment are the weird nerds who defend Elon Musk from everything, or the fanboys, and I do use the term boys on purpose here, of walking advert for hair retention Andrew Tate. The thing that's particularly interesting in the Tate case, and I promise I'm not about to do a thing about how the left needs self-improvement gurus, is just how much he holds his audience in contempt. Yet they seem to adore him for his insights, I guess you could call them that, and Tate makes a metric fuck ton of money off his audience. There's also the danger of a parasocial relationship crossing over into obsessive behavior. Now, I, for reasons that should be pretty plainly obvious, have to worry less about this. But I want you all to sit down. Some content creators are women, or present feminine. I know, it's crazy what people can do in 2023. And the thing about that is, and this is still somewhat related to the Tate stuff, which could honestly be its own video, and probably is by like 1 million people by now. People still feel like they're entitled to a woman's time, or even to own the woman. So this type of relationship can get really, really dangerous, and open up a lot of potential exploitation of women. Genuinely, I just googled female streamer stalked, and I happened to be looking for a specific incident I remembered. But there were so many, and it shouldn't have been surprising given the scale of the followings involved here and just the general men aspect of it all. But this is all fueled by the impression that, at least in the modern iteration of it, social media and platforms related to them can give people. The thing I keep coming back to when I think about these relationships and the creator-consumer differences between them is that I don't think either end of this arrangement are really happy with the relationship. That's not to say that there aren't healthy expressions of this that are possible. I'm sure there are, but in extreme cases of very large, very devoted followings, I bet that's a little alienating. I don't have an especially large following across all my various things, but even I felt a little alienated and a little like I always have to perform. And I bet that only gets worse. On the other hand, remember when I said I was feeling lonely over Christmas and watched videos I found comforting from content creators I like? It helped, sure, but it didn't exactly solve the actual problem, and for something like that in my case, which comes and goes, it's fine. Maybe it's fine, right? But a lot of people feel like that or feel worse things all the time, and these relationships are stopgaps at best and can't really provide what the person needs. It's a weird thing to think about during the writing of this script, but I think about this clip from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, where they're trying to get out of a parking ticket, so they recall all of the probably illegal shit they got up to. But there's a moment where Mac has written a letter to a baseball player, and I'm just going to play a bit of the clip for you.
Okay, look, I have a plan, all right? And it involves you getting this letter to him when you get out there to kiss him. Now, I have given this to Major League Baseball, his lawyer, his manager, his mom, and he has not gotten back to me, which means he hasn't gotten it yet. So just...
Okay. What is in this letter?
That's none of your business, all right? Just get it to Chase.
Did you write a love letter to Chase Utley? Is that...
In a lot of ways, yes, I do love him, but that is not a love letter in the way that you're thinking of it, okay? There's nothing sexual or...
Okay. That sounds good.
Pal around.
I'm gonna read it.
Yeah, read it.
Dear Chase. Oh, shit. There's stickers.
Yeah.
My God. Oh,
Well,
this
you gotta
is good.
jazz it up, you
Yeah,
know?
you sure do.
I wanna make it
You
pop.
sure do. Dear Chase, I feel like I can call you Chase because you and me are so much alike. Really. I would love to meet you someday. It would be great to have a catch. I know I can't throw as fast as you, but I think you would be impressed with my speed. I love your hair. You run fast. Did you have a good relationship with your father? Me neither. These are all things we can talk about and more. I know you have not been getting my letters because I know you would write back if you did, and I hope you write back this time and we get to be good friends. I am sure our relationship would be a real home run.
He sent the letter to so many people and he expects a reply, and it's played for laughs in the show, right? Because there's an adult who's written a letter to a sports player like he's a 9-year-old. But it speaks to something true. People do genuinely build this kind of relationship, and that goes to the extreme, and to that extreme as well, and beyond. And it's a neat, exaggerated illustration of what I mean. All of this has made me think and consider something which is really the most basic question, and it's the one that I genuinely came into this kind of mixed up about. Is it okay, from the perspective of the kind of creator I'm trying to be and others claim to be? I guess let's find out. This isn't okay, is it? Alright, this is kind of the big question, and so far in this script I've put a lot of myself into it, which is ironic because that's exactly the kind of thing I don't like to do because it's a heavier lean into parasociality than I'd like. That being said, I need to offer a perspective here, which is that this has problems from a left content creator perspective. I want to explain something that happens when you do this. You make decisions, and that might seem obvious, but the impact of these decisions change who your audience is and changes the trajectory of what you do, how your audience will behave, and what issues they might have. I remember making this point to someone who, to be honest, I personally dislike, and the feeling appears to be mutual, and making this point probably touched a nerve for them. These decisions, whether you're a YouTuber, TikToker, Twitch streamer, Twitter shitposter, journalist, blogger, I don't know, Tumblr person. I don't know what Tumblr people call themselves. I'm so sorry. Please feel free to chastise me in the comments about that. They characterize your audience, and it means that you have an element of responsibility to be aware of that and the risks therein. Take me. My first proper video on this channel was about agrocentrists, and in choosing to do that topic, I chose not to do all sorts of other topics. It means that my audience was shaped by it early on, probably vaguely left-leaning, British people who dislike media centrists, and the obvious alignment across party lines of various liberals against the left to empower the right. As time's gone on, the character of the audience has changed. It's got bigger, but the broad strokes have probably remained roughly the same. If you watch this, you're probably a person around my age, probably a guy, and while I jokingly described my audience as a bunch of frustrated office workers and civil servants, I suspect that's not entirely the case. The thing about constructing a left-wing core audience, like I've tried to do here, is that left-wing people tend to be idealists, and I love that about them. I'm a strong idealist myself, and it can cross the line into unethical practice. Because watching a YouTuber be left-wing, a Twitch streamer dunk on politicians being clowns, listen to a podcaster tell you about how much of capitalism is underpinned by little more than scam artistry and speculation, isn't praxis. I know there are people in my audience who don't just do these things, who do tenant union work, trade union work, all sorts of things, and watch and listen to their favorite content creators. Great. Do that. If you take anything away from this video, aside from the thing I said earlier, please don't let watching these things be the extent of your engagement. Just don't let it be watching videos. If you have the capacity to handle more, do more. Ultimately, I just don't want to be dishonest with my audience. It's why at specific points I chose to show you and tell you when I was doing the thing rather than just tell you. I don't want you to get the impression that this, whether it's on stream where it can feel more interactive or on here where it's me talking to you as if we're hanging out, is anything more than entertainment from a person who just wants to make videos about things they find interesting. And if you find it interesting too, then that's just where the majority of the joy should come from for both of us. The flip side of it is, I don't necessarily think there's anything wrong with wanting to get paid for the work that you do. I don't ever expect to make the golden £141 per video. And that's okay, because for me, it's not about that. Even if I do get to the monetization conditions on YouTube, that's just not on the cards for me. And to be honest, we all make compromises when we do anything, especially under the system we live in. I mean, I use plastic notes with a dead monarch's face on them to buy things that I earn by working a day job, and I'm very lucky that some of the plastic faces come from this. Those are things that compromise me, though, to an extent, because, and I know it's trite, there's no ethical consumption under capitalism, does have an implicit follow-up, which is that there's no ethical production either, and content creation, even for the purposes of left-wing propagandizing and education, falls under that umbrella. Obviously, not all things are as ethically compromising as each other, but it's something to bear in mind, and no, that is not just an excuse to do as you please. The issue I suppose I take with it from a more generalized perspective is that we should understand what relationships we're cultivating with our audiences, and if you're in the audience, you should be aware that these kinds of things can happen. Obviously, for the majority of people, the overwhelming majority, this won't go to extremes, but given how we choose to construct our audiences and how our audiences tend to find us through algorithm-directed websites, knowing is half the battle, especially since my content is political in nature and your interests, therefore, are probably political in nature. Something that I also wanted to reflect on is how not actively courting these kinds of relationships as a content creator can genuinely harm your prospects, can lower your ceiling even. And look, I get it, my interests are kinda niche and specific, and so the ceiling was never high to begin with, and I'm not ever going to be able to consistently produce things that the algorithm will grab and boost. I try very hard not to lean into the parasocial, and yeah, this has ended up being a bit of a personal essay, so sorry about that. I don't have a particular ease with it by instinct, and it may well have hurt my progress as a content creator, but I'm okay with that. My decisions have meant that my audience is likely a generous, but not necessarily wealthy one, and it would be very easy for me or anyone else operating in this space to take advantage of it. I'm not putting that on anyone at all, but it is a real thing that can happen, and if the extremes of these relationships can get as bad as we've spoken about, then it's something to be aware of. That's all. I think that going into this in the first place compromises you, and that's not on the audience. I do think there's some truth in the UK context of something I saw from someone who I've forgotten, so I'm very, very sorry. If I do find the tweet, I will put it up here. Which is that the defeat of Labour in 2019 has led to nothing except parasocial relationships and video essays, and I'm not innocent on that front. So think of this video as a kind of be aware and try to keep it healthy, as well as something of a confession of how guilty I am of that exact thing. If you're in the audience, keep a healthy and respectful distance. If you're a content creator, be mindful of your position and the responsibilities that gives you. With all that said, I'm going to try and wrap all this up in a neat little bow. Concluding thoughts. In a way, this became something of a confession from me, and that wasn't originally what I had in mind. The fact is that isolation and loneliness took a hold of us all at various points, right? And we found various ways to cope. Some of us baked cookies, some of us made video essays, some of us ate cookies and watched video essays, and to be honest, those were probably the people who won overall. These relationships have existed since probably social hierarchies have been a thing, and since there were mechanisms to create distance between people, and this kind of thing can't be solved by a handsome person telling you how they feel. What it can do is make us all a bit more aware of what happens when we cross over from healthy engagement into the kinds of things that we criticize when we say parasocial relationships, because we all know what we mean, but we're not necessarily being specific. It's tough out there, life's hard, and that's probably not going to change for a while. So enjoy listening to your favorite podcaster when you eat, and have a blast writing your scripts, like I have with this one. But bear in mind that immersing yourself too much in it takes you away from potentially healthier mindsets, and if you're like me, away from things that might be where you're better placed to make a real difference. That's all I really could come to. Sometimes when I conclude, I just kind of point at the thing and go, yeah, that's a thing, huh? Thanks everyone. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, remember, like, subscribe, hit that bell. I know I'm doing the parasocial thing. And I also have to thank my proofreaders, which is my partner and Mic Wright. Mick is, in fact, a person who is a content creator as well. You can find their stuff in the description below. And I also have to thank my wonderful patrons. I get it. Yes, it's ironic. Including the top tier patrons, SMD, Tazi Scheider, John N, Mercutio, and Drone Riff. Thank you very, very much for your patronage. If you would like the videos a day early, if you want to get access to the VIP section of the Discord, if you just want to see the scripts early, tell me what topics to make the videos on, it's all over on the Discord. It's all in all of the tiers over there. The link will be down below alongside everything else. But with that, everyone, I want to thank you all again and say take it easy. I'll catch you next time.